All right. So today I'm drawing Miriam from Hunter x Hunter. I don't know anything about the character besides there was I remember hearing I would talk about in some of these videos I'd mention YouTube videos that would do character breakdowns. I actually had a character breakdown describing Miriam in the background while I was busy doing something else. I forget what it is I was doing, but I tried to pay attention, obviously, because the video's on and I was interested in hearing about it. I heard that he was a very, um, he was a, do I want to use the word villain? I don't know if he's anti-hero or villain, or because in some of these shows they go and expose why the villain is doing what they're doing, and sometimes people could say, well, that person was going by extreme measures but they had their reasons for doing it, so it becomes like a hate love type thing, or it becomes like a thing where people would even go as far and say that, oh, the villain actually wasn't a bad guy, they were just they were positioned to be doing what they were doing, I guess, right, quote unquote. But I'm pretty sure Miriam falls under the, from what I can remember, what I can barely remember about what I heard about him, he was, I guess, closer to actually being evil, and there was like not really any redeeming factors or information regarding how they could kind of try to explain why he did what he did, and I think it was more like just being a rootless tyrant type thing. That's what I remember. Him just being bad to the bone, I guess, quote unquote, right? And I kind of would do some of these breakdowns on characters, obviously, in these videos, and I've actually explained this before in a video. But I do these breakdowns because if you can understand why the character is the way they are and what place they're coming from, you can kind of insert that into your art if you can, if you have the skill level to do so, and if you understand how that would be inserted. Um, and if you understand how to do something and what it is you're trying to do, then you can do it deliberately, and actually deliberately, it can cause a deliberate effect on your art. And that's just visual art. There's also musicians. I was making composing music for over 10 years, and what happens is I remember starting, and the first few years in, I didn't. I can't even listen to that stuff. Maybe some people could listen to certain things or whatever because they could hear what I was doing with it, but me being like overly critical of myself, I can't even hear that stuff, right? But then I go through different levels and stages of being able to express the sound that I want. So let's say I'm imagining a sound in my head, and then I need to figure out how to get this sound to come out with whatever instrument, or it was a program, and I gotta play out the notes and the keys and the drums, and then I can now put out a sound, and then maybe my creativity, so my ability to create a more advanced sound, or a sound that is the sound is like illustrating or painting a picture or telling a story, what maybe that develops over time. And then I also need to become better at uh bringing forth uh these new ideas. So my ideas are getting better, and then do I know how to actually create those ideas? And then it went to further levels. Can I actually emphasize certain things in these ideas? So like, for example, it, when I'm getting closer to the 10-year mark, so like in my second 5-year run, I'm making stuff, and what happens is doing way more painting pictures, doing way more storytelling. Like, for example, when you hear the music, if you have exposure to certain things, you could probably start imagining certain things. So, like, for example, some of these things would sound like it was a theme to a specific hero, or a theme to a specific villain, um, and or a theme to a specific world, or a theme to a specific type of character or arc. So you could literally hear that in the music, like you, and there would be all types of variables that you want to talk about, like there could one of them might sound like if let's joke around and talk about video games. You go look at it because I especially using video game instruments to compose the beats. Um, it wasn't just like any random villain. It would be, oh, this villain is associated with like this villain is probably a vampire, or this villain is like they would be the final boss at an on an ice stage in a video game, and you could hear that there was things that like brought out emphasis on those things, or this is a jungle villain, or this is a villain from like a war zone, or this is a villain from like outer space, or this is a good guy who they're resembles Superman, and it's like and he's like flying through the air, or this is like a hero who is associated with this theme or that theme, or this is an anti-hero is associated with this theme or that theme. And what happened is I figure out exactly what things to emphasize in the melody and the drum patterns and the the way the melody is progressing. So it sounds positive and then it goes euphoric, or it sounds positive then it drops negative, or it sounds negative and then it builds up and becomes progressively more positive, or it sounds like it's um, lost in space and it doesn't know where it's going, but it's trying to find its way out, or somebody is on a journey and they're lost and they don't know where to go, but they'll find their way, or somebody is trying to save someone else, or like whatever it was. Like I was painting the picture with my music using certain sounds and certain progression and certain understanding of how to put those things in the music after so many years of actually making music and then just developing all the skills over time. Just through intentionally trying to get the sound, I eventually would figure out how to do it, right? Um, Over thousands of reps, over many, many years, right? But same thing with art. So, with art, excuse me, I should say visual art, whether it's sketching or colors or whatever, what are things that I'm doing to help bring out these aspects of a character, to where a person who sees that character and knows the character and knows the series, they might feel a deeper connection with the art they're seeing because they're seeing these qualities get brought out in the art even more intensely, right? Now, Miriam, from what I can remember, how he visually looked, I couldn't see any of that in him. I had to hear who he was to understand what type of villain he was. And I have not watched the show enough to actually be able to speak on him at all. So if there was anything I could even know to bring out quality wise in him, I wouldn't actually know how to do it because I don't know anything about him. I actually can't even see it in his. So when I hear about who he is, I can't see that in his persona. This show kind of reminds me of like shows like One Piece, where I had explained prior that the character's personality would come out more in the way that they act, the decisions they make, maybe even some of the movements that they do, and what they say, their voice tonality, what they choose to say when encountering a scenario. Like Luffy would choose to be positive, say something positive. He choose to do something that was positive or pleasant, or he chooses to do the right thing. He's like a very to the bone, like good guy type of persona. And then there'd be other characters that they weren't exactly like that, and they'd have their own specific personality, whether it was very pure or whether it would had its own different aspects to it. Like not every good guy is like a pure optimistic all the time, all the way, always nice, always happy, always like not every good guy is like that. Some of them are edgy, some of them are anti-heroes, which means that they literally could be even doing bad things or be heavily mistaken as doing bad things or doing very extreme things that would make people think that they're a villain, but they're actually doing it with good intention, right? So there's intention, there's uh and then there's all types of things that go into why a personality would be what it is. I don't know any of that about Miriam, and I don't think I did amazing job illustrating him here. Um, I was using a reference. I feel like I could have done a better job getting the getting it closer to the way I would have liked it to be to the reference, if I could word it like that. So yeah, I begin by laying out the head structure and overall proportions. Miriam's design combines human and non-human features, making him a great character to study. I mentioned in one of the shorts, he reminds me of Cell from Dragon Ball Z. And I was kind of joking, saying like Cell is the only person who looked like how he was in Dragon Ball Z. In the prior short, I was saying Miriam has one of the most unique designs in Hunter x Hunter, which I don't know for a fact, but that was a hook to pull you in. But the thing is, like, that's from what I've seen of all the characters I've seen in that show. I can't remember what all the characters look like, but I do know he had a specific appearance that did not appear like anybody else. And that appearance actually reminds me of Cell, literally. And I wouldn't be surprised if I don't remember if Dragon Ball Z came out before Hunter x Hunter, or it's possible that even if Hunter x Hunter came out first, Dragon Ball Z could have been being written before Miriam was even ever presented. So I don't know who came first, but from what I remember of the character breakdown I heard of Miriam, he's not his level of pure evilness is is definitely not coming from the same place as Cell. Cell was created specifically to destroy the Saiyans by any means necessary, including absorbing people. He would so there was parts of the series Cell was going around and absorbing people, which means that that person would be walking around going on about their day. A normal human going on about their day, probably just getting home from work, went to the grocery store to grab some food, was going for a jog in the park, and Cell would show up and suck that person out of their clothes. So what happens is there is a bunch of empty cities in the world because Cell pretty much ate all of them, but he absorbed them through his tail. He was an interesting being or whatever. Was he like an android who had this tail where he could suck people up and take their energy into his body to make himself more powerful? And he also sucked up the other androids who were created by the scientists who created him to make himself very, very powerful. He also sucked up people he defeated and absorbed them. I should say he absorbed them into his body. So all the energy they had is now in his body, making him more powerful, helping him evolve into higher forms so that he has more abilities. And then he's become this being who's so powerful that it's very, very difficult for the Saiyans who are defending Earth to be able to beat him in a fight, right? His whole thing was that he was created to specifically show up and destroy the Saiyan aliens who were on Earth defending Earth, and it was no remorse. It's just like, no, I'm here to do this and I don't care. He doesn't care that people die. He doesn't care that he's gonna hurt someone's feelings. He's just like, nope, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. And no begging, no reasoning, no talking this out. I'm here to do what I'm gonna do. Like, he's a robot programmed to do it. So some people would look at him and be like, oh, that's pure evil. That's so bad. This is a person that is saying, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and there's nothing you can do about it. And he actually will become so powerful that he almost pulled it off. And part of it was because people would let their ego get in those. So along the pathway of him achieving that final form and doing what he was gonna do, everyone had opportunities to stop him before he could power up to the next like form or whatever, and they would become Vegeta was egotistical and said, "Oh, I'll let you power up and slow beat you." And then because Vegeta didn't just defeat him right there, that then he powered up and became so powerful that now it was gonna become nearly impossible for everybody to stop Cell, until it was now on Gohan was a teenage boy to actually win the fight. After Cell had began killing off everyone else or whatever, right? and he was going to destroy everything. So the whole thing is that he's that type of evil. Here's another example of evil. There's Frieza. Frieza was more follows the archetype of being a pure evil person, from what I can remember. And I forget if he was like Meruem at all, but I can barely remember that they were the similar type of evil. But the whole thing with Frieza, his specific personality that I actually heard a breakdown being explained. There was playlist playing in the background, and I just overheard him it being explained, and I remember this, so I think it's kind of a good thing to bring up as to why, like for example, explaining Frieza's personality and his aspect of pure evil, right? So his whole thing is that supposedly he's pure evil to the bone. He's ruthless. He doesn't care. He's going to do whatever he wants to do. He's actually powerful enough to do it. That's the funny part. Even though he got defeated, he was powerful enough to win. It's just that he was egotistical and let things slide. That's the only reason he lost. So when you first see him, he's sitting in. He's not even going around doing things by himself. He's a commander of his army, and he doesn't even walk around. He's in a less evolved form, so his body is smaller, and he's sitting in his own personal little hover spaceship and telling his soldiers what to do. And he doesn't even have to come out of his spaceship. He just floats around commanding people and telling them what to do, right? And his whole personality is that he actually doesn't, this is funny, he doesn't actually say anything that's bad besides, like, he might say that for for example, he says he wants the entire Saiyan race to die. So some people would say, oh, he sounds like a raceless Hitler type of a ruler, tyrant type person, right? So he'll say things that could come across the wrong way, but the funny part is the way he talks. He's a very nice person. So, but his logic is that he can do whatever he wants. He's powerful enough to do it. That's actually how the world works, unfortunately. Like, so for example, America is a powerhouse in the world because they have the most powerful army and bases all over the world. So what happens is people, whatever land or areas America has claimed, if people go against that, they're automatically called terrorists. Now, let's say that they're doing it for a bad reason. Yeah, they're terrorists, whatever. But everybody would usually side with America for the most part. And the people who don't side with America, they usually lose. That's literally, but that's like a modern thing that's established now. But if you look at, everyone who lives in America, I live in America, right? What happens is America got established because there's people who came here who had higher level weapons and was willing to pull the trigger first. So let's say there was like a story about how they came here and there's Native Americans here, and there is people from Europe and Spain who came as pilgrims. They were escaping the British and they wanted to start their own, civilization outside of Britain. They came here. I guess they learned how to live off the land. They killed off the Native Americans and pushed them all the way out of the areas so that they could live there, right? That's just something that took place in history. I don't know what conversations happened. I don't know if there was reasons in logic why things played out the way it did, but that's literally what happened. And they got to claim the land because they just killed off whoever was in opposition, right? Britain wanted to kill off America, so America fought for independence. Tomorrow is going to be July 4th, which is called Independence Day, and it represents when America, the pilgrims who came and settled here and killed off who was here to live here, and they brought the slaves over and was building up everything. They also had to fight against the Britain who was still trying to tax them, because they're saying, no, you came from us. We are going to tax you for whatever you're doing, even though you're on a whole nother continent now. And they said, no, we don't want to get taxed. So then they fought them in a war. And because they won the war, now they get to be established as America, who is independent from Britain. Literally, hence the word Independence Day, right? But if you want to talk about how any type of establishment in the world that doesn't get questioned or opposed, that's literally how they set everything up. There was a point in time that they went to that location and said, listen, I'm going to take this. and if you don't agree with me, I will just kill you. And I have my military here standing right behind me with their guns pointed at you. So submit or die. That's literally how armies would establish any type of dominance anywhere, and then be the people who are there ruling the place. That's how they did it. Now, luckily, people don't have to see that, but that's literally what happened in history that set everything up to the point where it's exactly the way it is right now, right? So Frieza, he's just like that, but what happens is his whole thing is that he will show up. He's funny. He'll he'll show up and he'll conversate with you and ask you nicely to just submit or give. You might have something he wants. He'll say, "Okay, just give it to me." And everything will be fine, and we'll just move on about our way, right? So, or for example, when Vegeta was going after the Dragon Balls and Frieza was going after the Dragon Balls as well, Vegeta had gotten the Dragon Balls, and Frieza shows up and says, um, "Listen, I need those Dragon Balls, and I don't care what you were doing with them. I need them. So can you please give them to me? And if you give them to me, then I'm just gonna move on, and everything's gonna be fine. But if you don't give them to me, I will kill you." That's literally what he said, right? Not literally what he said, but that's literally the way he is. Is that he'll ask nicely, and then if he gets opposed, he'll just kill off the opposition, and then just do what he's gonna do. And the funny part is he's completely capable of doing that every single time. And the reason he ends up losing and getting towards losing is because he was also egotistical. So, for example, there was times that he was sent. The reason that you hear about the Ginyu Force, or you hear about other soldiers like Dodora, or who's the guy who has like the voice that he sounds like as if he's not straight. I'm not trying to sound rude, but I forget the dude's name. But these soldiers who are high level soldiers that Frieza sent out to go after the Saiyans, or sent out to do his bidding for him, he would underestimate the Saiyans, or he'd underestimate the enemy and think, "Oh, you know what? Instead of sending a whole fleet of soldiers, I'm just going to send you, or I'm just going to send both of you guys out, or I'm going to send you and your squad out to go handle them." And instead of sending them with extra backup, and what happens is his soldiers end up getting defeated, his high level soldiers. So that's when he ends up having to go into a higher level form, and he has to get out of his spaceship that he floats around in. So he has the luxury of floating around his spaceship and just commanding people to do whatever he needs to get done, right? But instead, now he has to get out of his spaceship and now walk around on foot and fly around and start doing the things himself, because he's now gotten his own soldiers killed off because he was too egotistical. So that was his thing. He egotistical, but he's also nice, but he's also confident, because what happens is he actually had 100% success rate. It's just his own ignorance is what caused him to lose anything, literally. He could have even beaten Goku, but because he was supposed to just show up and destroy the planet with an energy ball. And instead, he wants to just prove to Goku, who is supposedly the greatest fighter on planet Earth, because he's a Super Saiyan, he's not even human. He wants to prove he could beat him. And then instead of just one-shotting him and going into his final form and one-shotting him, or just going into a powerful enough form and one-shotting Goku, he charges up slowly and allows himself to get into a drawn-out battle with Goku, which gives Goku a chance to actually match him on every level and keep powering up, and then Goku accidentally activates becoming a Super Saiyan, literally, which is something that was a legend. But so Frieza allowed Goku so much time to power up and have a fair fight with him, just so Frieza could prove egotistically that he would win, that Goku was able to charge up enough to become a Super Saiyan and actually finally defeat him, right? So you see in Frieza's face, he looks intense and he's also smiling, and Frieza is never having a genuine smile. It's always a sarcastic smile. It's always a smile where, if you know the character, he's probably saying like, "Oh, this piece of scum, I'm gonna destroy them right now," and he just laughs to himself. And that's like that's his actual thought process. Or his thought process is, "Oh, like, so they have something I want, I'm gonna go and ask them for it, and if they don't give it to me. I'm just gonna go kill him. And he's like, he will laugh to himself afterwards. And he wouldn't say that, but that's literally what he's thinking. And you would know that's what he's thinking because that's if you watch a show and see what the character, what type of character he is, you would understand that. So then you'd understand that whenever you draw him, he's usually always smirking. The only time he's not smirking is if like he was actually got defeated in battle, and he's usually not smirking then because he's actually upset that somebody who he should have beaten and he actually was going to beat actually was able to defeat him. So he's actually now very, very upset. So he's either very, very upset or he's always smirking because like he's actually overly confident because he thinks he's gonna win. And it's not that just that he thinks he's gonna win; he knows he's gonna win. So there's confidence. There's so when you're drawing him, if you understand how to draw a person who's smiling as if they're sarcastic, that would definitely be the type of thing that you want to emphasize. So I don't know if there's creases in the mouth. There's maybe the way the eyebrows are sitting. He doesn't have eyebrows, so the upper tilt on his eye and his eye shape, things that would cause his face to look relaxed and smiling, and also, intense because he's evil. His intensity comes from the fact that he's actually evil, right? So if you understood those things, you could portray that there. But I wouldn't know any of these things about Meruem. A lot of the characters, from what I can remember in Hunter x Hunter, their face is not very emotional, but I can't remember. And there's definitely probably times where things happen that will cause them to feel emotions, and maybe that was portrayed, but I can't remember that. But blah blah blah. Just digging into the topic on how emotions can be presented in different characters, right? So yeah, Miriam's design combines human and non-human features, making him a great character to study. Next, I work on the armor shapes and body structure. As the drawing develops, I refine the facial features and strengthen the silhouette. His cross arm pose helps create a strong sense of confidence and authority. Overall, I'm very happy with how this drawing turned out. Could have done better though, obviously. And my fault. I forgot to mention this. The reason I brought up both Frieza and Cell is because he is literally as if he's a combination of both of them in his appearance to a certain extent. The way his armor is and the way even his color is. So that's also why. And also, Cell has a helmet, but Frieza doesn't have the helmet. He just has like the eyes. So they literally he literally looks like a combination of them both. And if I knew his actual personality, I'd be kind of surprised if I was able to see that he might actually even have personality and behavioral similarities to both of them. And from what I can remember, he does resemble some of the villain qualities of both of them. From what I could barely remember off that breakdown. So I did explain them both. I can't explain him, but I can explain characters who actually look like him, and might have even been inspired by him, or those characters inspired his creation, and tried to use explanations of those two characters to kind of segue into saying, I don't know anything about him, but I'm seeing that there could be similarities between him and other characters that I've actually drawn and spoken of. But yeah, so basically, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next game.